In the world of hip-hop, most artists are happy with a chain and a hit record, but Curtis, 50 Cent Jackson, wanted to own the building the table was in. We know the stories of the 9 shots and the beefs, but the real story is how he touched billionaire status and then hit a massive legal minefield. So was his 2015 bankruptcy a collapse or the most brilliant chess move in financial history? Stay with us as we break down the G-Unit empire and how 50 Cent made and lost $1 billion, the vitamin water masterstroke. The journey to the billion-dollar mark began with a realization that changed the blueprint for celebrity business forever. Before 50 Cent entered the room, rappers were treated as simple billboards for other people's products because the industry standard was a flat endorsement fee. A company would pay an artist a few $100,000 to hold a bottle or wear a shirt, and once the check cleared, the relationship ended. However, 50 Cent saw the flaw in this system and realized that his influence was the primary driver of the product's value. He understood that a one-time payment was a trap because it capped his upside while the company owners made billions off his culture. When he approached the founders of Glaceau to discuss a partnership for vitamin water, he didn't ask for a traditional endorsement check. Instead, he demanded equity. He wanted to be a minority owner because he knew that if the company grew, his net worth would grow along with it. This was a radical move at the time because it meant he was working for free up front, but he was betting on his own ability to move the needle. He helped create a specific flavor called Formula 50, and he used his massive musical momentum to position the drink as the premium choice for a health-conscious generation. He was seen with the bottle in music videos, at award shows, and in every press interview, which made the marketing feel organic rather than forced. Because he had skin in the game, he worked harder than any paid spokesperson ever would, and the results were staggering. Vitamin water went from being a niche beverage to a global household name almost overnight. The cultural gravity of G-Unit was so strong that it pulled the brand into the mainstream, and by 2007, the beverage giant Coca-Cola took notice. They realized that they couldn't compete with the cool factor that 50 Cent had built, so they decided to buy the entire company for $4.1 billion. Since 50 Cent had negotiated for a minority stake, his payout was estimated to be between $100 million and $150 million after taxes. This was a massive moment in financial history because it proved that celebrity influence could be converted into institutional wealth through equity ownership. Meanwhile, the rest of the rap world was still fighting over small club appearances and guest verses, while 50 was sitting on a mountain of corporate cash. This deal gave him the war chest he needed to launch the G-Unit conglomerate, but it also painted a target on his back. He had moved from being a rapper to being a serious player in the world of high finance, and he began to look for other industries where he could apply the same aggressive ownership model. He realized that the key to reaching billionaire status was not just making money, but owning the means of production. He started looking at spirits, technology, and real estate, but he always maintained the same philosophy of demanding a piece of the pie. He understood that his brand was a portable economy and that anywhere he went, the money would follow. This masterstroke with vitamin water remains the gold standard for how an artist can use their platform to build a fortress of assets that lasts long after the hit records stop playing. It was the first time the world saw that 50 Cent was a shark in a suit who knew exactly how to value his own shadow. But the sugar water deal was just the beginning, because he was about to take that war chest and start a literal guerrilla war in the liquor aisle. The Effen Vodka guerrilla war. Once the vitamin water deal provided the necessary capital, 50 Cent turned his attention to the spirits industry, but he didn't do it by following the rules of traditional advertising. He chose to partner with Effen Vodka, a Dutch brand that was struggling to gain traction in an American market dominated by heavy hitters like Ciroc. Instead of trying to outspend his rivals on television commercials, he decided to use the psychological tactics of guerrilla warfare. He realized that the most valuable real estate in the world was the human attention span, and he knew how to capture it better than any marketing executive in a high-rise office. He used his social media platforms to launch a relentless campaign of corporate trolling against his primary rival, Sean Diddy Combs. He positioned Effen as the clean, high-quality choice for the sophisticated drinker while mocking Ciroc as a sugary, inferior product for people who didn't know better. This was social engineering at its finest because he was creating a conflict that forced the culture to pick a side. He would post videos of himself throwing rival bottles in the trash or highlighting the superior filtration process of Effen, and his audience loved the transparency and the aggression. However, there was a deeper strategy beneath the public beef. While the world was focused on the jokes and the memes, 50 Cent was working behind the scenes to build a massive distribution network. He was visiting liquor stores in small towns and hosting events at the most exclusive clubs, ensuring that his product was always the most visible option. He understood that in the spirits business, distribution is everything, and he used his celebrity status as a skeleton key to open doors that were usually closed to new brands. He wasn't just the face of the brand. He was the lead salesman and the primary strategist. This hands-on approach allowed Effen to grow at a rate that shocked the industry, and by 2017, the brand's value had reached a point where it was time to exit. He reportedly sold his stake back to the parent company for approximately $60 million, and he famously posted a picture of himself with the money to show that he knew exactly when to cash out. This was a classic chess move because he realized that the spirits market was becoming oversaturated and that the best time to sell is when your leverage is at its peak. He didn't want to manage the day-to-day operations of a vodka company forever. He wanted to take the profits and move into the next high-growth sector. The Effen Vodka war proved that he could repeat the success of vitamin water in a completely different industry by using his own unique brand of marketing. He showed that you don't need a massive corporate machine if you have a loyal following and a deep understanding of human psychology. Meanwhile, he was already laying the groundwork for his transition into the world of television, where he would eventually build an empire that would rival the major networks. He was no longer just an entrepreneur. He was becoming a media mogul who understood that the real power lay in owning the content that people consumed every day. The Effen deal was just another brick in the wall of his billion-dollar fortress, but it also showed that he was a man who knew how to exit a burning room with his pockets full. The vodka game proved he could sell a bottle, but he realized that to reach the next level, he needed to own the very screens that were selling the lifestyle. The Starz TV empire. As the music industry began to struggle with the shift toward streaming, 50 Cent realized that the real wealth in entertainment was moving toward television and original content. He moved to Hollywood with a vision to create a series that reflected the gritty reality of the streets, but with the high production value of a cinematic masterpiece. He partnered with the Starz network to launch the show Power, and he didn't just want to be an actor in the series. He demanded to be the executive producer because he wanted to own the intellectual property. He understood that if he owned the show, he would receive a payout every time it was licensed, streamed, or sold internationally. When the show first premiered, it was a massive success because it connected with an urban demographic that had been largely ignored by mainstream networks. However, 50 Cent wasn't satisfied with just one hit show because he saw the potential to build an entire universe. He used the success of Power as leverage to negotiate one of the biggest deals in the history of premium cable. In 2018, he signed a 4-year overall deal with Starz that was reported to be worth $150 million. This deal was a massive win because it gave him the green light to produce multiple spin-offs, effectively turning a single show into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. He created Power Book 2, Ghost Raising Kanan and Force, ensuring that the network would have a constant stream of G-Unit content for years to come. He also produced BMF, which became another cultural phenomenon and further solidified his position as a kingmaker in the television industry. He was no longer just a rapper with a side hustle. He was a media architect who was building the infrastructure for a new era of entertainment. He realized that the network needed him more than he needed them because his audience was incredibly loyal and would follow him wherever he went. This gave him the power to dictate terms and to ensure that his family would benefit from the long-term royalties of these shows. Meanwhile, he was also building a massive production company that could handle everything from casting to post-production, giving him even more control over the final product. He was applying the same ownership philosophy to Hollywood that had worked for him in the beverage and spirits industries. He understood that content is the ultimate currency in the digital age, and by owning the stories, he was securing a seat at the highest level of the corporate table. The Starz empire was the crowning achievement of his success era, and it pushed his net worth closer to the billion-dollar mark than it had ever been. However, While he was winning the war for television dominance, he was also fighting several legal battles that were beginning to drain his resources. He was operating at such a high level that every move was scrutinized, and his aggressive personality began to create liabilities that he hadn't anticipated. He was building a fortress, but the foundations were being chipped away by lawyers and lawsuits that would soon lead to a $36 million crisis. He was about to learn that in the world of the ultra-rich, it is often easier to make $1 billion than it is to keep it when everyone is looking for a reason to take it from you. He was winning in Hollywood, but his obsession with dominating every market led him into a tech partnership that would become his first massive financial scar: the sleek audio disaster. Even the most successful moguls are prone to making mistakes, and for 50 Cent, the biggest error came in the form of a failed partnership in the technology space. He had seen the massive success of Beats by Dre and realized that the high-end headphone market was a goldmine for celebrities with a strong brand. He partnered with a company called Sleek Audio to develop a line of wireless headphones, but the relationship quickly turned sour due to creative differences and production delays. 50 Cent decided to walk away from the deal and launch his own brand, SMS Audio, but he did so without properly insulating himself from legal retaliation. Sleek Audio sued him for $16 million, claiming that he had used their proprietary designs and trade secrets to build his own product. This was a classic unforced error in the world of corporate law because it suggested a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the technicalities of a contract. The legal battle dragged on for years, costing millions in attorney fees and creating a massive distraction from his other business ventures. However, the real blow came when a court ruled in favor of Sleek Audio, ordering 50 Cent to pay the full $16 million in damages. This was a significant hit to his liquidity because it was a cash payout that couldn't be easily hidden or deferred. It was a reminder that in the boardroom, you cannot simply bully your way out of a bad contract the way you might win a rap beef. Meanwhile, the headline of a $16 million loss began to circulate, creating a narrative of financial instability that the media was eager to exploit. This disaster was the result of moving too fast and not respecting the complexity of the hardware industry. He had assumed that his brand alone would be enough to carry the project, but he overlooked the legal landmines that come with intellectual property. This loss was a wake-up call that proved that his aggressive tactics could sometimes be a liability rather than an asset. He had spent his entire career building a reputation as a master strategist, but the Sleek Audio case made him look vulnerable. It was a hole in the fortress that would soon be followed by another massive legal judgment, creating a cumulative pressure that threatened to sink the entire ship. He was starting to realize that the same persona that made him millions in the streets was being used against him in the courtroom. The lawyers were painting him as a reckless predator, and the juries were starting to believe it. This $16 million judgment was the first of two massive blows that would lead to his eventual bankruptcy filing. It showed that even with a war chest of hundreds of millions, a series of bad legal decisions can lead to a liquidity crisis that forces even the strongest mogul to rethink their entire strategy. He was no longer just fighting rappers. He was fighting a legal system that was designed to extract wealth from those who don't follow the rules. This disaster was a hard lesson in corporate responsibility and the importance of having a legal team that can protect the assets before they are ever put at risk. The headphone loss was a major professional blow, but it was his personal habit of trolling that was about to walk him into a multi-million-dollar legal trap. The $7 million defamation trap. While 50 Cent was managing his corporate empire, his personal habits of trolling his rivals finally caught up to his bank account in a devastating way. He had been involved in a long-standing and very public feud with the rapper Rick Ross, and in an attempt to win the psychological war, he obtained a private video of a woman named Lastonia Leviston. She was the mother of one of Ross's children, and 50 Cent decided to post the video on his website with his own crude commentary. He thought it was just another move in a rap beef, but the legal system saw it as a massive violation of privacy and a calculated act of defamation. Leviston sued him for emotional distress, and the case went to trial in New York City. During the proceedings, the jury was shown a side of 50 Cent that was far removed from the boardroom success stories. They saw a man who used his massive platform to humiliate a private citizen for the sake of a petty rivalry, and they were not sympathetic. The jury awarded Leviston $5 million in damages, which was later increased by another $2 million in punitive damages. This $7 million judgment was the final straw because it followed closely on the heels of the $16 million sleek audio loss. Suddenly, 50 Cent was looking at $23 million in immediate cash payouts, and his legal fees were mounting by the day. However, the real damage wasn't just the money. It was the precedent it set. It proved that his social media activity was a massive liability that could be converted into millions of dollars by anyone he targeted. This defamation trap was a self-inflicted wound that could have been avoided with a simple bit of restraint, but his aggressive nature wouldn't allow him to back down. The media began to circle like vultures, and the breaking headlines started to dominate the news cycle. He was being squeezed from all sides by lawyers who realized that his tough guy persona was a goldmine for civil lawsuits. Meanwhile, his business partners were starting to distance themselves, and his credit lines were being frozen. He was facing a total liquidity crisis that threatened to force the sale of his most valuable assets, including his G-Unit catalog and his television stakes. He realized that he was in a war of attrition, and that if he didn't do something radical, he would lose everything he had spent 20 years building. This $7 million judgment was the catalyst for the most controversial move of his career. He understood that he needed a way to pause the lawsuits and stop the bleeding, even if it meant damaging his public image in the short term. He was looking for a shield, and he found it in the federal bankruptcy courts. This move would shock the world and make him the subject of endless jokes, but for 50 Cent, it was the only way to protect the fortress. He was about to turn a public humiliation into a strategic advantage, proving that he was still the most dangerous man in the room, even when he was technically broke. With the lawyers closing in and millions of dollars on the line, he made the one move that no one saw coming: the bankruptcy shield and rebirth. In 2015, 50 Cent did the unthinkable by filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. To the average person, this looked like a total financial collapse. But in the world of high finance, it was a calculated maneuver to reorganize his debts and protect his assets. He used the bankruptcy shield to freeze all the legal judgments against him, including the $23 million he owed to Sleek Audio and Lastonia Leviston. This gave him the breathing room to renegotiate his obligations and to prove that his assets were not as liquid as they appeared on paper. During the court hearings, he famously played the role of a man who was living a mirage, claiming that his jewelry was fake and his lifestyle was rented. This was a brilliant bit of legal theater designed to lower the expectations of his creditors and to protect the core of his empire. However, while he was playing the broken role in court, he was secretly building his next act. He used the reorganization period to launch Sire Spirits and to secure the massive Starz deal that would eventually bring in hundreds of millions of dollars. He worked out a plan to pay back $22 million to his creditors over 5 years. But he was so successful in his new ventures that he actually paid off the debt early. By 2017, he emerged from bankruptcy stronger and more focused than ever before. He had successfully used the law to wipe the slate clean without losing his most valuable intellectual property. This rebirth was capped off by a massive move into real estate and infrastructure, most notably with the opening of G-Unit Studios in Shreveport, Louisiana. He took over a 30-acre property and converted it into one of the largest private film and television studios in the country, ensuring that he would always have a place to produce his own content. He also signed major deals with professional sports teams to make his champagne and cognac the official spirits of the NBA. This was the calculated final move because he had taken a public loss and converted it into a multi-billion-dollar legacy. He showed that wealth isn't just about how much money you make, but how much you can protect when things go wrong. He had survived the streets, the boardroom, and the courtroom, proving that his ambition disease was indestructible. Meanwhile, his net worth has climbed back toward the billionaire mark, but this time it is built on a foundation of stealth wealth and long-term utility. He is no longer just a rapper. He is an institutional force who owns the buildings, the content, and the distribution. The bankruptcy wasn't the end of his story. It was the start of his second act as a true titan of industry. He turned a legal trap into a strategic shield and showed the world that you can never count a man out as long as he still has a move to make on the board. 50 Cent proved that wealth isn't just about making money, but about how much you keep when the vultures circle. He turned a bankruptcy shield into a massive financial rebirth, proving that a strategic retreat is often the only win. So, was this a genius move? Let us know in the comments and make sure to subscribe for more.